even introduced to us, because Acts thinks we know who he is. He's so important, but of course we don't know who he is, because Acts neglected to tell us who he was. Anyway, we do know who he is. He's the brother of Jesus, so-called, whether the actual or some other I won't get into, and he's the leader of the church, and even Peter has to defer to him. That's quite clear in Galatians when the messengers from James come down to Antioch in Galatians chapter 1 and 2. Peter has to go according to James. And James is above Peter in the leadership of the church. Now, Rome doesn't want to tell you that, because Rome is based on what it claims to have inherited from Peter. Whether it actually did or not, I don't even know. They say the bones are beneath the Vatican. Okay, fine, I believe that if you tell me. But the point is, they don't want to mention James, because that's a total different Christianity than that they're teaching and based upon. They've Paulinized Peter, the way Acts Paulinizes Peter in about chapter 8, where Peter has a vision on a rooftop and learns that he can eat forbidden foods, which we don't know if that's historical, because if Peter needs a vision to do that, it means Jesus never taught it. So what are we supposed to conclude here? I can give you that vision if you're interested. Where is that vision? Peter standing on a rooftop. Oh yes, a Roman centurion is going to come and invite Peter to his house. Well, a religious Jew couldn't visit the house of a Roman centurion. I don't know if you've been watching the docudrama Rome on HBO television, but you can see how violent and out of their minds the Roman legionnaires are even in that one. So obviously a pious religious Jew couldn't go into their household because they weren't keeping proper purity regulations. Cornelius, captain of the Italica regiment in Caesarea, he's a God-fearing, a pious one supposedly, and prays to God all the time. I believe that one. Anyway, on the 9th hour, he sends his messenger, another pious soldier, all these pious Roman legionnaires running around Palestine. In between the killing, they're being pious. But in any sense, Peter's on a rooftop. Unfortunately, just before they come to invite him to the house, he gets a vision. And this is in 10:10. He fell into a trance, and he saw the heavens open, and a certain vessel came down like a giant sheet tied to 4 corners, being let down to earth. So a tablecloth comes down out of heaven for Peter, and on it were all kinds of 4-footed animals, wild beasts, creeping things. In other words, all the forbidden foods that the Jews won't eat because of purity regulations, and Muslims to some extent don't eat them either. Certainly pigs and things like that. And carrion. And a voice came and said, "Peter, get up, kill, eat." And Peter said, "Oh no, Lord, I have never eaten anything profane or unclean." And the voice said the same thing. "What God has made clean, do not make profane." And this took 3 times. And this vessel, and then the vessel was pulled back up into heaven. Well, I don't accept this as a historical episode, obviously. It's preparing Peter for the visit of the Roman centurion and so on and so forth. But the point is, it Paulinizes Peter, because Peter learns that he can eat forbidden things in this vision. But the problem that the writer doesn't understand, by Peter needing such a vision, shows that Jesus didn't regulate the matter in Peter's lifetime, otherwise Peter would know it. So it also implies that Jesus kept purity regulations, if we can identify. That's what the historical Jesus is all about, using passages like this to find out who the historical Jesus is. Now, some of you maybe never even thought about these things, but I think the actual historical Peter does come through here when he says, "No, Lord, no, I have never eaten any profane or unclean thing." Up to that point, he kept total dietary regulations, total purity regulations, and I assume that he continued to do so, because in Galatians we have a Peter that withdraws from Paul, and Paul calls him a hypocrite and says that you're misunderstanding the message of Christ, and Peter and Barnabas shun Paul in Galatians. So Galatians is a very important letter, but in any case, James is pictured later on in Acts as making his rulings supposedly over these issues. "And I write to the Gentiles who are turning to God," line 20, because since James is the big cheese, "stay away from pollution of the idols, fornication," strangle things, which turns out to be carrion, "and blood." And then he repeats it again on line 29. "I'm writing you this letter to abstain from things sacrificed to idols, blood, strangle things, and fornication." And then he repeats it in Acts 21. in case you think I'm a jerk and don't know my scripture, I want to be apprised of the opposite, that I think I'm pretty up on scripture, and I'd be willing to go into one of those television contests with any of the more pious people and see who does better. Anyway, and this is what we wrote: judging they observe no such thing to keep from things sacrificed to idols, blood, carrion, strangled things, and fornication. These are explained much better